Stop the insanity. Get focused on what really matters in life. Your faith, your family, your finances, and your future. Now sit back and change the trajectory of your life. This is Money for Life, brought to you by the 100-Year Savings Solution. Are you concerned about the markets? Stop taking unnecessary risks with your money while also getting great benefits. Visit us at 100yearsavings.com. Now, let's welcome your Money for Life hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
Hello, everyone. Rick Sapio. Welcome to Money for Life. And we're going to talk about a very impactful film that I recently watched called The Social Dilemma. And it's available on Netflix. I did not have an account on Netflix. I had to sign up for the free 30-day account because I had never logged in before. Maybe that makes me an oddball today, but the reality was somebody told me you got to watch this movie, The Social Dilemma. And if you have not watched it on Netflix, I think it's only available on Netflix. It's very interesting that the high-tech industry would expose itself in the way that it did. And my thinking after watching the film was it exposed itself with just a tiny sliver that most people in government are aware of, but it didn't go into the massive other negative aspects of social media that are bringing down our country. And there's a quote from the film that I want to read before I turn it over to Teresa, my faithful partner here, who told me to watch the movie. But the quote is, there are only two industries in the world in which people are referred to as users. And that's the high-tech social media industry and the illegal drug industry. We are known as users. And it's interesting because we in social media, we, the individuals who use social media, are indeed the product. And someone quoted in the movie said, you know, if you think about it, if you're not buying anything, then you are the product. Unfortunately, there's 2 billion people that use social media globally now, and all their information is being traded and swapped, and we're being sucked into ways of thinking and behaving that we don't even have knowledge of because it's all happening subconsciously. So, Teresa, The Social Dilemma, why did you want me to watch that movie, and why do you want to do a podcast for the world on this topic?
So, Rick, I'm so glad you took my suggestion. Typically, you're not on Netflix or any of those platforms. And so I know it was a big deal for you to get on Netflix. However, I thought it was such an important documentary, such an important subject, and it's totally aligned with what we talk about here at Money for Life. Do you want to live a life on your terms, with your values, on purpose, or do you want to live a life where you're really somebody else's customer, you're somebody else's statistic, you're somebody else's number, you're considered a user? Do you want to live a life on your terms, on purpose, with your values, or do you want to be Silicon Valley's statistic, a customer? Do you want to allow yourself to be manipulated? And I don't use that term lightly. This is what they talk about. We are data to them. We're statistics. We're dollar signs. We're profit centers. But, you know, that's true of many industries, but there is an evil here. There is a disconnect with humanity here because we're talking about time. These platforms, Silicon Valley knows that the most valuable asset that you've got to them is your eyeballs and your time. They are constantly studying and researching ways to control your time and control your eyeballs, because basically what they've got to sell is your attention. So they've got to keep trying to get your attention. And look, at the end of the day, if that's what you choose for your life, so be it. But when we allow our kids to come under the spell and the programming and the manipulation of Silicon Valley, you are basically signing a life sentence for your child to be under their control. And that's a decision that you're making on behalf of your child, because once their wiring gets adapted to that environment and needing that constant dopamine hit, that's it. Silicon Valley knows they got your kid, your child for life. This is a message from our sponsor, the 100-Year Savings Solution. Rick and I do these podcasts because we want to impact people's lives in 4 areas: their faith, their family, their finances, and their future. And with a 100-year savings solution, it gives you more options to live a better life in those 4 areas. It is a specially designed whole life insurance policy that gives you more for your money than you'll ever get from a bank, a CD, or the traditional savings solution. Go to 100yearsavings.com to learn more.
I remember as a kid, my life just unfolded, and my life was what happened between the time I got up in the morning until the time I went to bed at night. And watching kids today, the part of their life that they actually live is those small, tiny segments of time between screen time. And it's sad. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, in fact, who said that her son plays 9 hours of video games a day. And you just think about the cumulative billions and billions and billions of total and complete wasted hours. And it's no different than what Rome did back in Roman times when there was 400 Colosseums. And, you had a small segment of the population that ran everything. And then you had a massive percentage of the population that was glued to the screens of ancient Rome, which were the fights that happened on the Colosseum floor and the blood and the guts and the glory and all of that. It is absolutely positively no different. So let me ask you a question. Why are you allowing the people in your life to have heroin? We know it's highly addictive. Why?
Just to comment on the Romans, right? The Roman governing body knew that all they needed to do was keep their citizens fed and entertained, and they could do whatever they wanted to control the citizens. They could pass whatever laws they wanted. They could do whatever the governing body wanted in terms of taxing and control and manipulation, because the citizens were fed and they were entertained. So with that perspective, think about what's going on in our country, in our world. We're entertained. We're in front of these screens. Most of us are fed, at least here in the United States. What's going on in the rest of our lives that we are giving total control over?
So what's the answer here? The answer is to just not do this. Leave your cell phone in your car. Stop all the crap online that isn't serving your purpose and your values and your key relationships. Cut the crap. And here's the interesting thing. You should, but you're not going to, because only a tiny percentage of the population actually wakes up. And only a tiny percentage of the population wakes up the people in their family. After watching the movie and talking to some close friends who have young children who are addicted to electronics, they still laughed at me. They're like, come on, you got to just do it. This is the world we live in. And so we know that of teenagers, the suicide rate is up exponentially due to the effects of social media. We know that the level of drugs that people consume for mental illness is up exponentially, but people continue to do it. And it's just a big question. Why? Why are people continuing to give their children the gun and the bullets and saying, it's yours, without any repercussions, without any accountability? Here it is. And then they wonder why they're addicted, and then they can't get them off. It's just bizarre. It's perplexing on so many levels.
Well, Rick, since the parents are addicted to the screen time, it's easy to allow the kids to be addicted to the screen time, because what happens in the interaction? The kids aren't asking for their attention. The kids are addicted to their screens. You bring up Steve Jobs all the time, how he did not allow his kids to have any electronics. And in this documentary, we're talking about corporate executive positions. These were the executives, founders, co-founders, CEOs of some of the top companies, tech companies in Silicon Valley. They said flat out, they do not allow their kids to have electronics. They know what happens to the brain. They've got access to the research. They've got access to the behavioral scientists that they've got teams of, because what they're doing is finding ways to get you more and more and more addicted to the screen. It is worse than cigarettes, than the drug dealer down the corner that is feeding you free or giving you free crack. It is worse than any of that, because you know why? It's legal and it's socially accepted to be addicted to your screen.
Well, take it another step, Teresa. So what the movie points to is if you've got some vulnerabilities, let's say that you're right-leaning or you're left-leaning, and you like to read propaganda on your political party, what they'll do is they'll keep feeding you more and more and more hate for the other side. And they're actually creating radicals on both sides because they're actually controlling what people see and how people think. And here's the interesting thing. If they know my behavior, artificial intelligence will feed me things that I want to see, whether they're true or not. So if you put in a term on Google that you want to search, you're going to get a completely different response to that search than I would, since my search history is different than yours. Artificial intelligence is feeding us whatever it wants to feed us. And the movie went into some examples of how this actually exacerbates. And it was interesting when they asked one of the founders of one of the companies, where do you see this going? Like, where is it going? Because right now it's out of control and AI is actually creating it. And he said, I see a civil war. And it's a civil war created by Americans that have common sense handing devices that they know are harmful to kids. That's where it starts. That's where the addiction starts. And I want to tell one quick story, which just cements this home. A friend of mine called me up. I love him. His name is Brett. And he said, my son's 13. He wants to be an entrepreneur. He wants to interview you over lunch. And we scheduled a lunch. I went out to lunch and the kid was literally, I am not exaggerating, he would not pull his head up from his phone. And I said, Brett, how do you allow this? What is he doing? He goes, no, he's just on his social media account. And I said, are you going to put the phone away? He goes, no, I don't put the phone away. He was talking to me without looking up. He had no interest in the conversation whatsoever. And then I said, Brett, how do you allow this? And he said, come on, your kids don't have phones? I said, no. Why would I give my kid a phone and have this kind of behavior? And he goes, I don't believe it. I'm going to come to your house and see. And so he came to my house a couple of weeks later. I asked my kids to play chess with him, which he did. He didn't see any electronics anywhere. He didn't see a TV anywhere. And he left and nothing changed because it's too late. Because we want our addiction to stay in place, but we think it's probably a good idea for our kids to not have that addiction. But you know what? We don't do anything about it. And it's absolutely sad.
So we sound a little preachy today. That's a feeling I'm getting. And I know we don't mean to preach. This is just so vitally important. And if it's not for you, your children, your precious, precious children, just think about what their future is going to look like if they don't develop other intelligences like emotional intelligence, like relational communication intelligence, like playing chess or another language or martial arts or anything, art, anything at all, musical instrument, all of that. It's so sad. I'm sorry, but Google's tagline used to be, or their motto used to be, do no evil. I think they were projecting out the evil that they knew they were capable of. And here we are today, a society that is so addicted. We have got to do better for our children. Again, if not for ourselves, for our children, we have got to do better. Mental illness for kids is an all-time high. Emotional illness, the pain, the loneliness, the frustration that our kids are experiencing. Rick, we've got to do better for our kids.
You mentioned that we sound preachy today, but what's interesting is we all have choices in our lives, and all we're really saying here is pretty simple. Which percentage of the population do you want to be in? Do you want to be in the vast majority of people that are addicted to screens and TV shows and social media and sports and all that stuff that is designed to be addictive on screens? Or do you want to be in that tiny percentage of the population that takes total and complete command of their life? They live it on their terms and not influenced by outside influences that control their time. And again, as I started this podcast, and I'll say it again now, the movie only addresses the addictive nature and the luring nature of social media, not all the other incredibly negative things that kids get involved in online. They say about 57% of kids between 13 and 18 have an addiction to pornography. I don't know how an addiction to pornography is going to help them as they pursue their lives and they're finding their mate and finding happiness and fulfillment in life. I just don't know. But to me, using, again, something that's not so common, which is common sense, I would check the box that it's probably not a good thing. But again, I can't tell you what to do, and nor can Teresa, but we can just show you what's happening in society. Go online and look for yourself. Go read the articles. Go watch the movie, The Social Dilemma. Come to your own conclusions, like Teresa and I have done.
I would add one thing, Rick. You're talking about the small percentage of kids that are not addicted to their screen time. I would predict that that small percentage is going to be the percentage that's going to be the future leaders of the world, because they're the ones who are going to have the communication skills. They are the ones that will have the ability to think outside the box. They're the ones who are going to be able to be creative and be problem solvers and lead others, because they're not in that programming trance that everyone else is, their peers were raised with.
And they're taught to ridicule each other for not being on the platforms and being addicted, which is really ironic. And just think back to Roman times. This happened. The vast majority of people went to see the games that day, and they're like, hey, what are you doing, you loser? Why aren't you coming today? And the guy probably said, well, I'm changing the world. I want to be an artist. What a loser who wants to be an artist. Look at Alfredo over there. And that's kind of how it is today. The shaming that occurs because people are trying to get off the grid. And that's part of it too. So thank you for listening to another episode of Money for Life. We hope you enjoyed it.
You have just experienced the Money for Life podcast, brought to you by the 100-Year Savings Solution. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. For more information, visit 100yearsavings.com. Have a blessed day.